Everybody. Wow, I think I might be a little bit too loud right now. Let me turn that down. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Mic check one. Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's Mr. Jackson's Peanut Butter Hour. Mr. Jackson's Peanut Butter Hour is brought to you by Sebby's Sweat Beans. Get a can of Sebby's Sweat Beans. It's not peanut butter, but it's the next best thing. Sebby's Sweet Beans has brought to me Peanut Butter and Company's dark chocolatey dreams for today's Peanut Butter Hour. Hopefully you guys are all excited to be here. I know that I am. Hey, Blue! Welcome. We're going to be doing some film club stuff today. So the last time I checked, Tommy's suggestion was that we go over an actual movie together, that we like talk through some stuff. He wanted to go through the episode Be Right Back from Black Mirror, and I'm totally down to do that. So if we want, what we could do is set up something like a Netflix party and do some chatting there. But to kick things off, if you don't have your peanut butter, I don't know why you would have Wendy's, one of the largest donors to the Trump Organization, when you could have peanut butter. Support your local peanut butter company. Get some peanut butter right now. Mr. Jackson's Peanut Butter Hour, hell yeah. That's where it's at. Big money. How do you eat me? Are you guys writing vor again? Because I swear. None of that. None of that. So today we're supposed to be talking about Film Club and going over some of the stuff that we would be doing with Film Club. The funny thing is that all of this is kind of an extension of Film Club. We have this amazing opportunity to start making stuff together. So if you're at home and you have a camera or a phone, really you can start editing videos right away. I've started doing that a little bit on my phone. This is a bit expensive, but I would strongly suggest getting a little app called LumaFusion. LumaFusion, this one, it pops up with a thing that says Luma Touch. It's how I edited my super secret video that I posted on Discord. I also just ate at Chick-fil-A the other day, so yeah, I feel that. Stuff he's doing so I can have a definite reason to not like him, and it's disgusting. Yeah, literally is so stupid. I don't understand. Wendy, the guy who owns Wendy? Okay, I think it's the guy who owns Wendy's. Before the corporate overlords get aware of the fact that we're talking about them behind their backs, we should probably change our subject to something about Doom. Not Doom, the video game. I meant like Doom. We're going to open this thing up. Let's go to Netflix. Let's watch a movie together and talk about it. Oh, LumaFusion. Guys, my ADD is strong right now. Oh my goodness. LumaFusion, if you haven't used it, I strongly suggest that you give it a try because it is very intuitive and very professional. It does a lot of the same stuff that you can do on a more professional app. Let me just sign in here. Don't mind me. Whispers. Oh, good. It's already signed in. Sign in. Yeah, remember me. In case you're wondering, my password is ... I'm not going to verify my phone. Not now. Get out of here. You can tell that I've been watching a lot of Dirty Money, which is very good. There's also Altered Carbon. The Chef Show. Very amazing. What do you guys think I should watch? You can see that I've got all of this anime down here that's trending. What just? Oh, Ugly Delicious started playing. Let's turn that down. We don't need a bunch of system audio coming through right now. So, Sebby's Sweat Beans. I just love saying it. It's just like my favorite thing to say. I wonder if anybody else has picked up. We're going to hop onto the Discord here and just let everybody know. Mr. Jackson's Peanut Butter Hour. All right. I just had a very long pause while I read comments and tried to get my focus back, and it didn't work. What's this called? Black Mirror. Black Mirror. If you guys haven't ever watched Black Mirror, I do suggest it, but take it with a grain of salt because some of them are far more difficult to digest than others. Oh, I don't think I watched the 3 most recent episodes because I just have not been feeling the new seasons. But in season 2, there's a really, really good one called Be Right Back. Be Right Back stars Domhnall Gleeson, and it is very good. So I'm going to click into that and show you guys some clips, pull them up here. The general premise here kind of goes back to, we can skip this intro. The general premise goes back to our second quarter, the idea of how does technology change the way that we value human beings, right? So as we're looking at this, we see from the get-go, from the very beginning, Domhnall Gleeson's character, this shot in and of itself shows social isolation, right? Shows this like not connecting with other human beings, and he's on his phone. That's what made the early seasons of Black Mirror so good, is that just the filmmaking. From the filmmaking aspect, there are some amazing visual cues and auditory cues that come up early on that suggest what our whole theme is going to be. So I really like that. As we look at it, we see this idea immediately introducing what our general plot is going to be. We can watch Good Time. What's Good Time? Is it rated PG-13? This one isn't. It's rated TVMA, so I'm breaking all the rules. And obviously you can tell from a storytelling perspective, again, from the get-go, I'm going to use that phrase a lot apparently, it's introducing to us exactly what the problem is going to be. If we think about storytelling in the same way that I've been talking about essay writing, we're introducing our thesis right away so that people understand what they're following along with. Social isolation, big thing. From a visual perspective, we don't even have to have any dialogue to show that social isolation plays a role. And then immediately you have this opportunity by having a TV screen in the car to introduce some of the other stuff that's going to go on. If I pause it right here and nobody's seen this whole episode, then you might be able to infer what the rest of the episode is going to be about, right? That's the idea, is that we should be able to see just from this, oh, okay, there's a couple. It's raining. There's isolation. He's on his phone. There's this idea of synthetic flesh advancing. Maybe the cyborgs, androids, that sort of stuff is going to play a role in this. And so we find that out within, what is this, 30 seconds? Maybe less? Notice that he's cutting out people from his life. Notice this. Now, this also thematically is going to come up because, spoiler alert, since we're talking about the whole episode, his isolation from her ends up being the exact opposite problem as the story progresses. So this idea of how he is not fully connected, he's not fully present, and he's not a good boyfriend, husband, whatever he is, right? That's immediately addressed. Now, I want to go back to this very powerful quote from C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis once said in his book, like I remember what it's called, in a book about grief. Something about grief. We'll have to look it up. In his book about grief, he's writing about his wife that they got married. She was terminally ill and died very shortly after their wedding. He writes about how to go through this process of grieving somebody that you love. And he says the most heartbreaking part was when he started to think of all the good things about her and the fact that she was gone. He realized that he was no longer remembering the reality of who she was, but rather was only remembering the best parts. And so all of the reality, all the stinky bits, all of the farts that you share with your significant other, all of the times where they do something that really pisses you off, all of that goes away. And you have to grieve the loss of the bad parts just as much as the good parts. So we'll see that that plays a huge role in this, and we're introduced to this character. The character's not exactly a good guy.
Poems, learning poems.
Burning poems.
There's nothing wrong.
It's not very you.
Thank you. Yes, agree, observe, Sammy. I just love it. Notice this image. Notice how this is framed. First of all, every decision that's made within a film, especially one that's produced to this degree, is a very intentional decision. So we examine a shot like this where the car is isolated by itself in the absolute void, right? This is the one light that she has, this like cute moment, right? He's not all bad. He's got some good parts, right? He's not exactly the world's jerkiest fiance husband. He's just a normal human being. And there's good that is mixed with the bad. There is light that is in the dark. All right, we're going to skip ahead. She comes back in.
Soup, all right?
Yeah, great.
Tomato.
Notice again the social isolation.
Tomato.
The second one.
He does not care.
Do you mind having yours out of a shoe?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this idea that he's uploading every bit of himself from his childhood up onto the internet. Now, let's get to the actual like impetus of change here. Whoop, things you're not allowed to watch. No, that's why it's TVMA.
Dress? I was going to be back by 2 or they'll do us for an extra day.
Job's just come in. Needs to be done by the end of play today.
All right.
Now notice visually how much has changed in the morning. First of all, his phone is away. Second of all, how bright the room now looks. Notice that they're talking and she is the one that has a device open, right? There's this sort of balance in their relationship between the real world, their interactions with the real world, and the digital world. There's supposed to be this sort of dichotomy that's being played out visually and narratively throughout the story.
No, it's fine. We'll drive all the way
Now,
there.
I'm going to cut to this part here because I want one of those. I want this digital drafting table so bad. That was my favorite part about early Black Mirror, is that their envisioned futures actually included stuff that I was like, yeah, but that's kind of dope though. Like, I don't care if the bees are secretly going to assassinate me. Like, some of this tech is awesome.
You were lazy to answer, so leave your message.
Notice how visually we're hearkening back to that same moment that we saw earlier. A lot of darkness, one single light that is lighting up her work, right? She is still lost in technology just as much as he was, right?
Do you have a customer reference number?
I don't know. I was just.
I think the powerful moment of the tension that is being built up here is the fact that everywhere that she's looking is through her technology, right? Every single bit of her anxiety is manifest into the technology. This is supposed to be the way in which she is saved, right? The way that we are supposed to be protected. The future is supposed to give us technology that makes us safe.
No, and it's meant to be back by 2, so...
They're closed now, there's no point calling back. And his just goes straight to messages.
Those batteries are a joke.
So, long story short, I'm not going to show you the most sad scene. Husband is dead. Again, that motif of light versus dark is really playing out right here. That all of the black that they're wearing is almost overlit and turned to this light shade of gray. Now, the reason I think that this visually really works is that the grief that she's experiencing isn't as powerful as it would be if it weren't for the plot that we're going to experience, right? So this washed out gray looking black, if it was actually a drab, sad, dark void, then the grief would feel very real. But instead we get this sort of washed out vibe. This coldness from her.
It's not real, is it?
Boom! Look at that line. Absolutely echoes what we're talking about.
At Mark's wake, I sat there thinking it's not real. People didn't look real there. Voices weren't real. It's like you're having a spacewalk and no one can get...
This is why I think the metaphor of this episode is one of the strongest out of any Black Mirror episode, is that we are looking at it through this lens of what is reality, and the metaphor of technology creating a real that isn't real, while grief also creates a real that isn't real, is very, very powerful. The critique as it grows throughout this narrative is that ultimately technology is making us experience a life that is a lot like grief. So it's a powerful sort of connection, the metaphor that's being built throughout this story.
I can sign you up to something that helps. It helped me.
Very powerful scene. Notice how then I opt to, she's looking for ways to grieve. That technology is pretty dope, though.
I don't care what it is. I don't want it. It's obscene to use his name. His name, for God's sake. It hurts. You know it hurts.
Which is why I signed you up.
What is it? What is it? It's just...
You click the link, then you talk to it.
You talk to it.
You type messages in, like an email, and then it talks back to you just like he would.
He's dead.
It's soft.
Now, I think that the critique of technology here is in the fact that it is stopping us from feeling the most traumatic of experiences. It is an escape, and it's an unhealthy escape that's creating a false reality. Now, I can't help but say that while also smiling, thinking about how much I've escaped into Animal Crossing in the last 2 days, 3 days. 4 days? I don't know. I have to check my Animal Crossing calendar. So this idea of escaping into another reality that doesn't feel real, they're painting it as this kind of horrific situation. But in reality, many of us are like, that's the point. That's what makes it so sweet, which is why light in this is too powerful. Right? From a lighting perspective. Sammy, I feel like costuming is a really underrated part of a lot of visual media. People aren't just accidentally wearing things. It's one of the most deliberate parts of more produced things. Absolutely. Right? That darkness, if they had made the clothing more dark there. We also see this, I mean, that's not costuming. That's a sheet that she's wearing.
Their Facebook updates, their tweets, anything public.
Don't tease me, Blue. You're online bullying me. I'm kidding.
It's sick.
Just say hello to it.
Don't do
You
that.
like it? You then give it access to his private emails.
The more it has, the more it's him.
Gross. Don't confuse me, can't handle it. I really like how comfortable they make her feel in this scene because she's experiencing her real grief, and also how dark red that sweater is, right? This idea of kind of connecting back to blood or heart, right? This is true feeling. And it's comfortable. She is at home. She's not putting on a show, versus what we saw in her dress, this very plain black cloth. Notice how, I'm going to hop back here to 9:58. Notice how even when you compare the dresses next to each other,
And don't worry, it's not...
how they've made her gray even more gray. So that was very much a visual choice, right? Let's go back to this amazing drafting table and just talk about how good it is. No, I don't want this dramatic moment. Oh, vomit. I wanted the drafting table. Now, thematically, the idea of introducing a baby into this situation is in order to illustrate the difference between life that is created by technology and life that is created by nature, which, oh my gosh, are you guys getting Frankenstein vibes yet? Because I definitely am. And to think about how this story that was told in the 20-teens is basically just stealing the same concepts that we saw in the 1800s when we first introduced science fiction is very powerful. Our fears about technology haven't changed. Technology is going to to make us question our technology is going to make us question whether or not we are human and what it means to be human, right? So as we're thinking of this, we've got these two things that are all playing around with each other. It's almost like when you start to write a story based on these sort of models of narrative that we're familiar with, that the pieces all fall into place, right? If I'm going to really try and illustrate what grief is like, then I need to illustrate what false grief is like. So I have a dichotomy. If I'm going to illustrate what life is like, then I need to illustrate what false life is like so that I have a dichotomy, right? These two things that end up playing against each other and playing with each other create tensions, right? Two things pulling in different directions, pull a piece of paper taut and create a tension within our narrative, right? I like that it just popped up with the big word pregnant there. Pregnant. Her rejection of the life that is created mimics and parallels her rejection of the life of technology that she embraces. This is why I say this shorter version of Be Right Back, this shorter version of this story of AI and how AI works, Be Right Back is a much more powerful narrative than Her. If you've ever seen Her, it has a lot of the same general concepts, but for some reason they play out in a much more shallow way and it's drawn out. I really like the world that Spike Jonze created with Her, but in Be Right Back, there's a very tangible sense of what's being felt throughout all of this. It's very visceral. God, I would hate that keyboard. That's what really matters here. If the future doesn't have mechanical keyboards, I don't want to be any part of it. Very powerful moment. I can't look away. I'm sorry. Oh. All right, let's skip. That's all the feels I got for this one.
I'm okay. I promise you I'm okay. I've got to go, I've got a deadline.
Look at that. Now, notice this is especially powerful of a show for you guys to watch. If you haven't watched it, this one is a good one to watch right now because it helps us to wrestle with this idea of social isolation, especially in grief. So when you're in a situation where you're like, my only connection are the phone calls I'm getting and text messages that I'm receiving, is that real human connection? Does that actually count? She is texting with her late husband. That doesn't count. The husband's dead. You can't text with somebody who's dead, can you? Isn't that just the same as texting with somebody who's alive? And doesn't that mean that the other person at the end of the text message that's being sent and received isn't as valuable as a human being? Communicating via text, doesn't it change the way that you value the person you're communicating with? Now, we see that grief oftentimes results in a lot of social isolation. So again, a very powerful metaphor to use here, this idea of social isolation.
Are you sure? Tight deadline, gotta be in by dawn, so. Better go, if you upset me.
Sorry guys, I gotta work. I'm gonna leave. I feel like I should be doing comedy commentary on these so that people actually want to watch it, but instead I'm just like, movie good. What are you doing now then? Duh. What does it mean to speak with somebody? She uploads more and more. She just wants to hear his voice.
So, how am I sounding? Hello?
Hello. You sound just like him.
So now we're building what it means to be human from the baseline up, right? We're saying, can I text with somebody? Does that count? Well, what if it's voice chat? Does that count? What if it's voice chat with somebody's face? Does that count? What do I need in order to consider this a real relationship and a real human being at the other end? What if I'm touching their hand? What if I'm holding them? Does that count?
Almost creepy, isn't it?
It's super freaking creepy.
What's through the gem?
Oh, it's a phrase you heard.
Can we just say Black Mirror fully guessed that AirPods would be a thing, and all they did was just take normal headphones and chop off the wires and like, yeah, it's an AirPod.
Oh, okay. So I threw a gem.
Now, who would want a blue light flashing every time somebody's talking?
Trying to figure out if there are any poisonous sea creatures in Greece. When this floats
And I will be the first one to admit that I've done exactly this. Taken long walks while listening to something else on my phone. I'm just like walking around hanging out with Malcolm Gladwell in my head. Now, notice this. Notice what I was saying about light washing over everything. And it's false light. This idea of light bringing in this false sense of closure, this false sense of feeling. It's washing over everything, and it's very intentionally blown out, right? These aren't sharply contrasted at all. That lack of contrast, this green blur and the very slight shadows everywhere, absolutely on purpose. Notice that this doesn't ring, it doesn't resonate with like the beauty of a countryside that you would normally see in a movie. Instead, what it shows us is this very muted sort of feeling.
In the country. You must be getting old.
Ooh, you must be getting old, says the guy who is fully dead. Pluto, chill.
No,
We're streaming.
I'll call them back later.
Boom, rejects a real life person who's on the phone in order to accept her relationship with this fake person. What does it mean to be real and fake? What does it mean to be real and fake? Feel how that tension keeps on pulling our narrative, pulling it more and more taut. The more taut our narrative gets as these two forces pull against each other, the more that we have to discuss, right? The more that we have that feeling of like, what's gonna happen? So when that rips, or when somebody punches through it, or when it gets crumpled, anything that happens after that moment of tension feels incredibly powerful.
You're very fragile.
Yeah. I was gonna talk to you about that, actually.
What do you mean?
There's another level to this available, so to speak.
Capitalism. You see how that goes? You're just like, hey, you want to, ooh, nobody liked that sound. You want to feel some grief? You want to escape your grief? Another $5,000 extra dollars might just make that possible, right? Think about how we've commodified relationships. That's not necessarily exposed in this, but I do think it's a powerful underlying theme in a lot of Black Mirror. And this also reminds me of a really powerful quote from Into the Wild. Happiness is only real when shared. Happiness is only real when shared, from this very powerful scene from Into the Wild. It's also a book. You should read the book. Spoiler alert. Happiness only real when shared. We're going to watch a whole minute of him just like crying and realizing this. Very powerful end to that movie that is not being reviewed right now. But happiness is only real when shared. She experiences this powerful moment, a very real life growing inside of her. And she has to have her phone next to her and needs him to be even more physical.
So fast, isn't it?
I know it's like the speed you'd expect a bee's heart to go out or something. Wait, hang on.
Notice that light and all of the gray and even this yellow that would normally be a very bright color completely washed out by the light. She drops her phone and she's going to lose it. Don't pretend you haven't been there. We all know you've been there. Like treating your phone like it's your closest, dearest loved one. Okay. You're so fragile. She was referring to the phone, in case you guys didn't get that. Very washed out, but now, ooh, notice the color. So we discussed relatively briefly, and then Dante made fun of me for the idea of discussing how color plays a role in flattering skin tones. So notice she's very washed out, but there's still a lot of like human flesh tone here. Very blue, very orange, very like soft kind of pink skin.
Kind of experimental.
Don't quote me on that. Don't be
It's
weird.
not cheap.
What is it?
Are you sitting down? This might sound a bit creepy.
Notice the color change here, right? We're looking directly at the sun, but it doesn't blind our eyes. Completely washed out. What are we seeing color-wise, though? That was so different from what we were seeing, even when she was just like chilling here. Notice how that color shifts, right? Very blue and cool here. Something's different. Now look at the facial tones. You'll see it there. Because I'm getting a lot of pink in the undertones. But notice her skin does not look pink to me.
What's this? Block of gold?
I wish.
Again, upstairs.
Notice this door. It has a green tone to it. Green to suggest this sort of sickness, right? Things are unwell. It is unsettling. And the light coming in. Y'all know what's going to happen. I love the fact that this is like a retelling of Frankenstein, and in the course of a, less than an hour long, 50-minute movie, 25 minutes in, and we still haven't seen the reanimated corpse. Booty butt. Sorry. Grade A content here. Don't caress the silicone, man.
The whole lot.
This whole process is just kind of weird. Notice this shot. I thought that was very powerful. Darkness coming in through the window, light on the inside, and she shuts the window. Did you see visually what it had looked like? Where's that good shot? Sick and tired of this Art Flarks.
I don't even hear this.
Sorry. Look, you can hear. It's starting already. Don't.
What?
Don't swing to the back. Let it brew.
Don't feed it after midnight, I think is what he said. No, I'm kidding. That's a Gremlins reference. Darkness coming in. She shuts the window. Oh, was it a later scene? It was. It's this scene. That's what I wanted to get at. Notice how light versus dark plays a huge role once this like monster, for lack of a better word, this life that is not life, comes into the picture. There it is. Light from the inside, complete darkness outside. Notice how that mimics very much visually what we saw at the beginning when they're driving into the dark, right? If anybody wanted that sweet, sweet Domhnall Gleeson, there you go. That's some shirtness Domhnall for you guys.
I'm dripping everywhere.
Notice the green undertones.
Hello?
Notice the green undertones and everything, the sickness. And then we cut back down here. Everything is kind of yellow. Yellow and green. And how her puke earlier was very yellowish green.
Would you like me to put some food on?
No, bro, you're a freaky monster, man.
No.
All right, let's skip the,
I mean, I don't need
you
to.
know,
I can
that
chew and
stuff.
swallow.
Can he do everything a real man can? And scene skipped. TVMA. None of that. Can I just take a moment to talk about how cool this freaking drafting table is? We're just going to watch this drafting table scene in full because I like it. I mean, he is a Weasley. He plays a Weasley, but he's not Ron Weasley. He's like he's a guy with a British accent with red hair. Of course he played a Weasley. Which Weasley? The older one that dates
I can appreciate it.
the sexy French woman.
I just need a bit
They're all sexy.
And I shouldn't have drunk last night. Next time, could you try and stop me?
Stop you drinking,
Yeah.
so I get to enjoy being a bit of a bastard.
Oh, I said a curse.
What's wrong?
Now notice all of that white washed out vibe. And then she's running away, right? How harsh the light now looks.
Hey.
And the green undertones. Now we have this tremendous tension because a fake life exists and she wants to isolate herself and remove herself from real life. The comparisons between the two are too stark. And this is absolutely borrowed from Frankenstein. This idea of what does it mean to be a real human and how does staying away from real humans affect our view of reality? That has a job that has to do with dragons? Yeah, I think so. I think he has a dragon job. I have to burp away from the microphone. I had a soda pop with my peanut butter for my Mr. Jackson's peanut butter hour. Very green vibes everywhere, very green tones. She's trying to come in and bring light into the picture, and you're starting to see just how unsettled the entire aesthetic is, right? Actual human interaction, and then we go straight back to darkness and little spots of harsh light as she's leaving.
Meet up more. Yes. Keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, get the heck out. Get the heck out. Like, you haven't done that to somebody. We've all been there.
She said that She said that she was happy that I'd moved on.
Moved on to what?
Exactly. Ooh, such a powerful line. And notice how the narrative tension creates dialogue tension, right? Narrative tension creates this tension in dialogue. She said she was happy that I moved on. Means so much more with the narrative. And then his response, moved on to what? That creates such solid dialogue when you're hearkening back to the tension that you've created within your script. What two forces are pulling against each other and how are they evolving throughout this narrative, right? Even something as simple as a Marvel movie. The Marvel movies usually have, here's the bad guy, here's the good guy. Here's what the bad guy wants, here's what the good guy wants. Tension, 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 punch through the paper, give money to the CIA, everyone's happy, right? With this, we see a lot more nuance, but it's still tension, tension, tension. And now, instead of punching through the paper, we start to see it tear. And you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh. When is he going to tear this paper in half? And so when this dialogue is moving that tension down the paper that you're pulling apart, my extended metaphor would be a lot better if I had a piece of paper here to extend it with.
Is that not the sort of thing I'd say? I mean, it is, isn't it? Are you sure everything's all right?
Yes.
Nothing better for examining tension than having a broken glass, right? And it also indicates sickness. And notice you're still dressing her in very comfortable clothes. This idea that she's not fully coping. We see the same color red that we saw in her sweater.
It's okay, I can do it. I can do it.
She's starting to be honest with herself. She no longer feels comfortable with him. Don't pretend to be ashamed, robot. We know you don't have real feelings. Now the color of her pants, being that bright red color, seems to make sense. Life versus not life. What does it mean to be human? Now we have a shot that is entirely darkness. How does that vibe with what we saw before? A shot that was entirely light, right? Here, right? Where both of them are washed out and lacking contrast. There's no longer light inside of the home.
Look, if you're going to pretend to be asleep, you could at least breathe, okay? It's just eerie.
Yeah, the whole thing's eerie. Or as she said, airy. Which is funny because it sounds like airy. Can you at least breathe? It's airy.
Oh, don't! Just get out! Get out!
you do want me to go.
Just get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! You're not enough of him! You are nothing! You're nothing! Fight me!
I don't do that.
Fight me!
Oh, I said an F word. I didn't say it. She said it. You need to apologize to all the students on stream that don't want to hear your F
How
words.
can you take this?
Did I ever hit you?
No. No, of course you didn't. But you might have done if I'd done this. This. I don't know. Maybe you would have. You wouldn't. Would you? You would.
I could insult you.
What?
There's tons of invective in the archive. I like speaking my mind. I could throw some of that at you.
Get out of this house.
What's wrong? I'm just noticing the chat just blew up. Oh, did I get shut down? Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Whoops. I'm still here in the chat. Can you still hear me? Is it everything is shut down? Because if you can still hear me, I just burped really loud in the stream. And I just realized my typo. But like, we're just streaming chat now. What can I do to make it better? How mad at it is me? You see me now? Am I back up? I don't know what we're streaming. I think people were making fun of me on New Horizons. Whoo! Haha, now I know how to catch a tarantula. Thanks for that. Am I gonna get copyright striked again? How do I know when I get copyright striked? Other than you guys just telling me like, hey, Mr. Jackson, it don't work no more. Hi, Kenna. Also, I just realized that I put Mr. Jackson's Peanut Hour. Yes. That is a good song. All the KK songs are really good. Goes on TikTok. I got this from Katie on TikTok. I got a TikTok from Katie on Discord and I had to watch it. You guys should get in on this anti-fascism conversation. Am I going to get things shut down now? Because I'm looking at anti-fascism. We know YouTube loves fascism. I just got a song literally called KK Comrade. This is happy news. Can I go back to Netflix? Is it going to get mad at me? And how do I know if it gets mad at me? Okay. So what if I mute the audio and then it has no idea? You all should watch this episode. If you haven't watched this episode, you really should. I just said the same thing twice. So these gray skies, notice how the B-roll shots that they're going for aren't lacking purpose here. The B-roll shots in between each, very powerful shot where he walks into the darkness. And then life. Real life in nature. Life. Real life in nature. Look at that green. Look at how that green does not look sick in comparison to the green tones that we saw before, right? Yeah, we're just going to power through it, and I'm going to be like, I'm a teacher. Coronavirus. All right? So everything about this, and then washed out. Washed out, right? What's real, what's not real. Them gray sweatpants. Them gray sweatpants are real. They're not going to shut me down. They are. They're definitely going to. And so now we're back to the same screen, and notice her social isolation and now also isolation from him. All right? This is the best part of the video. Oh, I zoomed in on accident. I zoomed in on accident. Now it won't let me unzoom. Yeah, on the songwriting stream, I got like 5 copyright claims, but not strikes. Kenna, don't make it weird. And then this idea of light that just sorts of washes over everything, and this bright blue color as she begins to accept her grief. And then the green that looks like life. She's screaming here. You guys can watch the final scenes on your own. You know, I keep on telling them, Fair Use should protect me for doing it for educational purposes. But YouTube is like, educate what now? This is about making money, not about learning. And her child grew up. And they're having cake together. Creepiest part is when you find out he's in the attic. The creepiest part is when the creepy monster's in the attic. That makes me so uncomfortable. Wait! Oh, it happened again. Again? I'll stop. Chill. It's because I made fun of YouTube. It's because I said YouTube's just in it for the money. Okay, let me check my emails and see if they got mad at me there. Mr. Jackson, we hate you. Don't do it again. Okay, they haven't sent me any emails. Nobody's that upset at me. So what's some good pieces of science fiction when we wait for it to go back up? A really good one that I like, and nobody's watching this anymore. I had to scroll down the last time I did science fiction. An absolutely remarkable thing. An absolutely remarkable thing. A great book. Also, I don't know if I'm back up yet, but that'd be cool. When was the last one I had? A Wrinkle in Time is not science fiction. Night film, Blind Sight. Am I back? Am I really back? Okay, cool. Blind Sight is also amazing. So if you haven't read Blind Sight, it's very weird and it's very trippy. It's about mind stuff. It's about these people who go up into space. One of them's a vampire, so the premise is very strange. But in the process, it's talking about... dang it! You're reading my emails! All right. I'm glad I'm back. Basically, just make it so the left is... Okay. So maybe if I had done... What? I can't do that way anymore. I can't do that on here. I'd have to... Yeah, it won't let me do it on my eCam. I turned off my screen instead. Okay, I'll try that in the future. But yeah, we're getting towards the end of our film class, and there's what? Only... No, not Blind Spotting. Blind Spotting is a great movie. Great movie, but not science fiction. Glad you guys are here. So if you haven't had a chance, definitely check out that episode of Black Mirror. It is a very, very good example of filmmaking as well as storytelling and of science fiction. It's one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. It also, this has been a good but chaotic live stream. That is correct, Kenna. I'm just glad that you're here. Now, this is where I remind all of you guys, read a book, read a book, read a book. All right. If you have not spent some time today to get into a book, you are doing yourself a disservice. You are not doing what's best for your brain. You have not done what's best for your health. So take some time, grab a book and get into it. It is even better than Animal Crossing. I've been reading books today, and that made it possible for me to know the difference between Animal Crossing and Animal Farm. Off too much paint air, and now I have brain damage. Read a book then. That doesn't help. I'm sorry, Dante. With that being said, talking about Animal Farm, if you have not read the last chapter of this, you definitely should. If you want to get a copy of Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, I have a digital copy that I've been reading, which is also very good. If you've never read Of Mice and Men, you could read this in the course of the day, and it would be a good read for you. And here is my favorite poetry book by my favorite poet, who is Rainier Marie Rilke. And if you have never read any Rilke, it's very good. It's somewhat religious, but it's very powerful sort of stuff going on. And of course, I am reading to you guys in the most recent video where I talk about The Little Prince, or Le Petit Prince. If you want to read the French version, that's a great way to understand the French language a little bit better. It's fairly easy reading. They're very short chapters, and it is very whimsical. There's an overarching story, so it's not the easiest to jump into, but if you listen to Binary and then just restart entirely, you might be able to get into it. Oh, podcast, Binary. An episode about a dude who tries to upload himself to an AI. Yes. Yes. Sammy, absolutely. Petscop does reference this, and you'll understand why Petscop references this the more that you read him. He's very troubled, but like hopefully troubled. Like he's like, man, I mean, what we would have said back in my day was he's super emo. He's not just sad. He's like stoked to be sad, or at least he's like, he thinks of sadness like chocolate and like life like a very, very decadent flourless chocolate cake. And so he's kind of like, oof, that's a lot of chocolate. And you're kind of staring at him like, yeah, you didn't have to get the chocolate cake. And he's like, nah, this is my favorite. That's my best way of understanding Rilke and the reason why I love him. Some music suggestions in case you haven't gotten any music suggestions yet. There is a brand new Childish Gambino album. There's a brand new Watsky album that I strongly suggest. And there's a brand new single by my favorite band in the entire world, Bright Eyes. So talking about emo stuff, check out that new song by Bright Eyes if you want to. Yes, there we go. The name of the actual podcast is Magnus Archives, and I am definitely, I am also part of 2012 Tumblr emo culture, as is this. I was birthed from the emo. You simply adopted it. No. So I wouldn't be surprised if this gave us a new wave of emo, this group trauma that we are experiencing together. If you guys are looking for some cool podcasts, maybe check out the Fundamentalist podcast, which features one of my favorite authors that talks about theology in a very good way. That's a good podcast. There's a lot of good stuff that we can get into. Here's the deal, though. In talking about destiny, death is one of those very important things that we have to wrestle with. And how we wrestle with and accept death plays a huge part in how we understand our lives and where our lives are headed. So when we look at a story like this and the tension that's built up between what real life is and what fake life is, notice that one of the main defining factors for what fake life is the lack of a birthday and the lack of a death. Right? So there's no beginning and end to the story for this robot, right? That seems to be a very powerful theme in that last scene, which I would show you if it let me. But in that last scene, it's very much like you have this child who's having her birthday, who's growing old, and this robot that requires nothing and that will never have a proper death date or anybody to grieve for them. So as we think about our lives through the lens of life versus death, it helps us to better understand how destiny affects that idea. The new emo is not e-boy or e-girl, but rather visco, as in the hyper-capitalist dark world. The most emo and gothic thing is not to adopt the darkness, but stand in spite of it. I would say that the closest thing that I saw to it, like an emo culture that was growing, were the people who were making like anti-capitalist vaporwave. Like the whole vaporwave movement online, I was like, I get this. This speaks to some part of me that I really understand. But with that being said, we can talk about all of that in tonight's stream. This has been Mr. Jackson's Peanut Butter Hour. You're all lovely and amazing. Keep up the great work, and I'll give you more information as soon as I get it. Yay Film Club. Stomp your feet, clap your lap, yell quack, quack! I could stop yelling. I should, shouldn't I? I should stop yelling.